So today we will continue with the mathematical operations with complex numbers. Today we are talking about multiplication of complex numbers. It's going to be a normal multiplication. Normally it will be a monomial times polynomial or polynomial times polynomial multiplication. And the only important stuff is that we need to remember a little bit about the powers of I. I have them here. If you don't remember, I, well, it's equals to I squared is going to be equal to minus 1. I cubed is going to be equals to minus I. And finally, I to the 4 is going to be equals to plus 1. So the process that we need to follow in order to do a mathematical complex number multiplication, first, we need to transform all the letters into I. So the negative roots, we need to transform them to I. After that, it says do the normal multiplication. Sometimes it will be monomial monomial or monomial polynomial or polynomial polynomial. So we do the normal multiplication. After that, it says change the powers of I. If we have powers of I that are I squared, I cubed, or I to the 4, we will need to change them. And finally, it says we need to do the like term simplification and ordering of the answer. So let's see some examples of complex numbers multiplication. In this first one, we have two values of c, and it says we need to do c1 multiplying c2. So the first step we need to do is c1, we change it, and it's going to be 3 minus 4 that multiplies to I, that it's the root of minus 4. And c2, it's going to be 7 that multiplies 3I minus 5. That means c1, it's going to be 3 minus 8I. And c2, it's going to be 21I minus 5. That means it's going to be c1, it's going to be 3 minus 8I multiplying 21I minus 5. So in this case, we have a binomial times a binomial. So the 3 will multiply this one and this one, and the minus 8 will multiply this one and this one. So it's going to be 3 times 21, it's going to be 63I minus 5 times 3, it's going to be minus 15. Then it's going to be minus 8 times 21, it's going to be 168 I squared. And finally, minus times minus, it's plus 40I. What happens next? We need to transform the powers of I. So this one, I squared, remember it's going to be minus 1. So it's going to be 63I minus 15. Minus times minus, it's plus 168 plus 40I. That means our answer is going to be, remember first, we need to write the real number. So 168, minus 15. It's going to be 153. 63 and 40, it's going to be plus 103I. And that's going to be my final answer. So as I was telling you, the process is very simple. We need to transform to I. After transforming our c's to have powers of I, it will be a normal multiplication of polynomials. After that, we need to change the powers of I when possible and do like term simplification and ordering. So let's see another example. So let's see, in this second exercise, it's going to be very similar. It says if C3 equals something, C7 equals something, do the multiplication between C3 and C7. So in this case, we need to transform them to I. So it's going to be C3, it's going to be 5 minus square root of 25, it's 5. So it's going to be 5I. The other one is going to be C to the 7. It's going to be minus 11 plus, and it's going to be 16i. So in this case, we need to do the multiplication, 5 minus 5i. That multiplies minus 11 plus 16i. So it's going to be, again, a binomial times a binomial. So we need to multiply everything by everything. So it's going to be minus 55. 5 times 16, it's going to be 80i. Minus times minus, it's going to be plus 55i. And finally, minus times plus, it's minus 80i squared. So we can change the power of I, and it's going to be minus 55 plus 80i plus 55i minus 80. That multiplies I squared, that equals minus 1. So it's going to be minus 55 plus 80i plus 55i minus times minus, it's plus 80. Remember, for the final answer, first we will write the real number part. So in this case, it's going to be 80 minus 55, it's positive 25. And then the imaginary part, that in this case, it's going to be plus 135i. And that will be my final answer. So actually, it's a super easy topic. We only need to transform to I, do a normal multiplication, change the powers of I, and do the like term simplification and ordering of the answer. So let's see another example. So in this exercise, it's going to be something similar. We need to do a multiplication. First, we need to transform them to I. So here it's going to be c to the 4 minus 10. That multiplies the square root of 25, it's 5. So it's going to be 5i. And c13, it's going to be minus 2. That multiplies the square root of 81, it's 9i. So it's going to be c to the 4 equals minus 50i. And c to the 13 equals minus 18i. So in this case, it's going to be c13, it's minus 18i. That multiplies c to the 4, that it's going to be minus 50i. If we do that multiplication, if monomial times monomial, so it's going to be minus times minus, it's plus. 18 times 50, it's going to be 900. I and I, it's going to be I squared. After that, we can change the powers of I. Remember, I squared, it's minus 1. So 900 times minus 1, it's going to be minus 900. And that's going to be our actual final answer. So the idea is super simple. We only need to do the multiplication between the c's, transform the powers of I, and that's going to be our final answer. So let's see other example. So in this exercise, we have 3 terms of c, but it's going to be exactly the same. First off, we need to change them to have i's. So this is going to be c1 equals 1 minus 9i. The other one is going to be c to the 5. It's minus the square root of 9. It's 3i. And finally, c8 is going to be 3 minus 2 that multiplies 2i. So this one is going to be c to the 8 equals 3 minus 4i. So after that, I need to do our multiplication. So it's going to be 1 minus 9i that multiplies minus 3i that multiplies 3 minus 4i. So in this case, we have 3 terms multiplying, so we can start multiplying the first 2 or the last 2, and after that the answer by the other one. So let's start with this one multiplying this one, and this one multiplying this one. It's going to be 1 minus 3. It's going to be minus 3i. Minus multiplied by minus, it's plus. 9 times 3, it's 27i squared. and this one will multiply 3 minus 4i. So now we have binomial times a binomial, so we need to do the whole multiplication. So the first one is going to be minus 3 times 3. It's going to be minus 9i. Minus times minus, it's going to be plus. 4 times 3, it's 12. I and I is going to be I squared. 27 times 3, it's going to be 51. I squared. And finally, it's going to be plus multiplying minus, it's minus. It's going to be, I'm sorry, it's not 51. It's 81. 81 I squared. Then it's going to be 27 times minus 4. That it's going to be minus 108 I cubed. After that, we can change the powers of I. So it's going to be minus 9i plus 12 that multiplies. Remember, I squared it's minus 1 plus 81 that multiplies I squared, that it's minus 1. And remember, I cubed it's minus I. So it's going to be minus 9i minus 12 minus 81 plus 108i. Our final answer, remember, first we will put the real numbers. Minus 81 minus 12, it's minus 93. Plus 108 minus 9, it's going to be plus 99i. And that's going to be our final answer. So actually, if we have 3 or more, it's going to be exactly the same. We need to do the normal multiplication of terms, changing the powers of I, and after that we will be able to do like term simplification and ordering of the answer. So let's see one last example. So imagine we have something like this. If c to the 7 equals something, do c to the 7 all of it squared. In this case, what do we need to do? We need to transform to the power of I, and after that we will do the normal multiplication, and in this case it's going to be the square, that it's also a multiplication. So it's going to be this one. If we transform them to I, it's going to be c7 equals minus 4 minus the square root of 100, it's 10i. That means going to be minus 4 minus 10i, all of it squared. So remember, in this case, we have two possibilities. When we have something squared, it's like having two of them. So we can do it like minus 4 minus 10i, that multiplies minus 4 minus 10i. And we can do it like binomial times a binomial, like the last exercises. Or we can use the special product rule here. Why we have a binomial squared? How do we do a binomial squared? Remember, it's the first term squared plus 2 times the first one multiplying the second one plus the second one squared. What it will be, it's going to be minus 4 squared, it's going to be positive 16. Then it's going to be minus times minus, it's plus. 4 times 2, it's 8, times 10, it's 80. 80i. It's going to be plus 100 I squared. So we need to change the powers of I. So it's going to be 16 plus 80i plus 100 that multiplies minus 1. 16 plus 80i minus 100. First, the real part, that it's going to be minus 84 plus 80i, and that will be my final answer. So if we have something squared, it's going to be exactly the same. We can use the special product rule, Or if we do the binomial times a binomial multiplication, at the end we will have the same answer. So that will be it for today's topic, that was complex number multiplication. See you on the next video.